Namaskar, dear learners. I would like to welcome you all to this lecture on agricultural price policy in India. So this lecture is a part of our course on agricultural economics. So I am Dr. Parag Dutta, working as an associate professor in the discipline of economics in Krishnakanto Handik State Open University. So in this lecture, basically we will explain agricultural price policy in India. Presentation of the structure of my lecture is like that. I will start with introduction. Then I will explain the importance of agricultural price policy in India. Then historical overview of agricultural price policy in India. Then features of agricultural price policy. Advantages of agricultural price policy. What are the factors that lead to failures of agricultural price policy in India? And lastly, I will try to explain what are the strategies for improving agricultural price policy. So before explaining agricultural price policy in specific, that is in India, we need to know what is agricultural price policy and why agricultural price policy is important, which I have already explained in my previous lecture on agricultural price policy. So basically, agricultural price policy is important for ensuring remunerative prices to the farmers. Now, in case of India, the importance of agricultural price policy lies in the fact that India is a agricultural based country. If you see, at the time of independence, the importance of agriculture was quite huge because most of the people, significant more than 2/3 of the people are involved in agriculture during the time of independence, and along with that it also contributes hugely towards the gross domestic product of India. Now, as India progresses and during our planning period, particularly in the second 5-year plan, we have adopted industrialization as a process of economic development, and gradually the contribution of industry and service sector has increased at the expense of agriculture, but still you cannot ignore the importance of agricultural sector, because although the contribution of agriculture towards the relative contribution of agriculture towards the GDP of India has declined over the years, but still a huge percentage of people are involved in agriculture. So ultimately, the agricultural price policy will decide the standard of living, the access of health, education of those people involved in agriculture. So that is why, as an agrarian economy, the importance of agricultural price policy in India is quite huge. Next, the importance of agricultural price policy in India also can be explained by the fact that India is a country having more proportion of people living in rural areas. Also, during the process of urbanization, peoples are moving from rural to the urban areas, but still a huge population are living in rural areas, and they are basically involved in agriculture and agricultural related or allied activities. So ultimately, the agricultural price policy, which basically ensure a stable and fair price for agricultural commodities, ultimately affect those people. So stable and fair price for agricultural commodities ultimately ensure the rural development in terms of increasing income of the rural people, because rural people are basically involved in agricultural sector. The third most importance of agricultural price policy in India can be explained by the fact that it ensures food security to the people living in rural areas and also in urban areas. Because India is the hugely populated country, and it has the distinction of most population among all the countries in the world. So that is why, having such a huge population, India requires huge food grains. So until and unless we have a huge production or increase in production and productivity in agricultural sector, there is a possibility that there is a possibility of food scarcity. So that is why agricultural framing of proper agricultural price policy is very important in India. Next, after explaining the importance of agricultural price policy, or after explaining the background of price policy, we will try to see what agricultural price policy is all about. Agricultural price policy, it can be defined as an instrument which provides incentive to the farmers and encourages them to invest in agriculture. That is the simplest definition of agricultural price policy. So in a developing country like India, majority of the population is engaged in agriculture, and people spend their income more on food or consumption. To protect the farmers as well as the consumers, every year that is why the government announces support prices for essential agricultural product. Since we are talking about agricultural price policy in India, it is necessary to discuss the history of agricultural price policy in India. In India, the agricultural price policy was introduced since independence. In 1947, the price policy was first introduced in India with the formation of Food Grains Policy Committee. The main aim of the price policy in India was to protect the interest of the consumers, but no attention was given on providing incentive price to the farmers. So that is why in 1964, a clear-cut policy was set up by the government for providing incentive to the farmers. So in that process, Agricultural Prices Commission was constituted by Government of India in 1965. So accordingly, that commission has announced the minimum support prices and procurement prices in order to guarantee minimum price to the farmers and for building adequate buffer stocks to maintain public distribution system. The commission which was constituted had also given importance on the adoption of improved technology and maximizing agricultural production. In the historical process, in the year 1985, Agricultural Prices Commission was renamed as Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices. We have to mention another important milestone related to agricultural price policy in India. That is, in 1965, the Food Corporation of India was set up. The main aim of Food Corporation of India is to ensure necessary procurement, storage, and distribution of food grains through a public distribution system. And another important objective of Food Corporation of India is to effective price support for safeguarding the interest of the farmers. After discussing the historical process of agricultural price policy in India, now we will discuss about the features of agricultural price policy in India. The first features of agricultural price policy is to enhancing public investment by ensuring water and soil conservation, by ensuring use of alternative and renewable sources of energy for irrigation. So these are the measures which will enhance public investment in, or you can say, investment of farmers in agriculture. So raising capital formation is considered to be another important feature of agricultural price policy in India. So as I have already mentioned, capital formation is considered to be one of the important aspects for investment and in turn productivity of agriculture. Usually, capital formation is relatively low in agricultural sector as compared to the industry sector because the amount of profit earned by the people involved in agricultural sector is comparatively lower to that of people involved in industrial sector. So that is why there is a need to discuss the issues, there is a need to discuss the methods by which we can raise capital formation in agriculture, because until and unless there is sufficient capital formation in agriculture, we cannot have productive investment in agriculture, and that will create, otherwise that will until and unless there is capital creation in agriculture cannot be sustainable. Next, improving agricultural marketing. Now, marketing is considered to be an important features of agricultural price policy. How proper marketing facility is developed, how we can store the agricultural commodities, particularly the perishable commodities, how we can develop the agro-processing industry. So those all things, and how we can market it, those goods. So that is why there is a need to improve the agricultural marketing, which is considered to be a features of agricultural price policy in India. Next, another important aspects of raising agricultural price policy is to raising agro export, such as vegetables, fruits, flour, poultry and livestock product. Because by exporting those goods, agro-based goods, by increasing the exporting of those goods, we can earn more income, which can be invested, which will ensure earning foreign reserve, but at the same time it will ensure that farmers will get remunerative prices for agricultural activities. The another important features of agricultural price policy is the land reforms. This is basically regulation of rent, ceiling on land holding, abolition of intermediaries for the interest of the small and marginal farmers. So land reform is, that is why, considered to be very one of the important measures, particularly for small and marginal farmers. Another important features of agriculture price policy, particularly in case of in India, is a crop insurance scheme. Because insurance ultimately decide guaranteed income to the farmers. If insurance is available, farmers will be interested to take some amount of risk in agricultural production. That is why developing the insurance culture in agriculture is necessary, particularly crop insurance, and that is why it is considered to be one of the important features of agricultural price policy. Next, we will discuss about, since we have already discussed what are the features of agricultural price policy, now we are in a position to discuss the challenges of agricultural price policy. One of the important challenge of agricultural price policy, it is an inequitable distribution of benefits. In agriculture, it happens that the farmers are not getting remunerative prices, particularly during the harvesting season, due to lack of storage facility, due to lack of proper marketing facilities. Farmers are forced to sell their product at a very low price. And what happened? At the same time, the consumers of agricultural goods, they are also paying a huge price for agricultural goods. Ultimately, it is the middlemen who purchase the commodities at a very low price from the farmers, and they sell those commodities at a very high price to the consumer. So that ultimately results in inequitable distribution of benefits from agricultural activity. So that is why it is considered to be one of the important challenges of agricultural price policy, and government has to ensure that farmers are getting the remunerative prices for their product, and the consumers also getting agricultural goods at a fair price. Another important challenge of agricultural price policy is how to ensure remunerative prices for all crops. So in that aspects also, intervention on the part of the competent authority is very important. Because, as I have already told, until and unless farmers get remunerative price for their crops, it is not possible for them to have a minimum standard of living, and at the same time it is not possible for them to invest in agriculture. Now, we often see that in agricultural market, there is a prevalence of market distortion and inefficiencies, which is considered to be one of the important challenges of agricultural price policy. Climate change and environmental sustainability also considered to be one of the important challenges, particularly in recent years, because frequent climate change makes it very difficult for farmers to predict what kind of crops is beneficial for what kind of climate. Because in case of India, both excessive rain and drought are not desirable. So that is why, due to recent change in climate, due to recent change in environmental condition, it is very difficult for the farmers to predict or to decide what kind of crops they should grow for. So that is why climate change and environmental sustainability is considered to be one of the important challenges of agricultural price policy in India. Now, what are the advantages of agricultural price policy in India? Why agricultural? We need a strong and robust agricultural price policy, because agricultural price policy in a country like India help to raise agricultural output by providing necessary incentive to the farmers, to protect the farmers, and the minimum support price, to ensure the farmers the minimum support price. The advantage of agricultural price policy in India can be explained by the fact that the agricultural price policy has provided necessary benefit to raise the agricultural output, and as a result, income of the farmers and their living standard has improved. Another important advantage of agricultural price policy is the stabilization of prices of agricultural product. So that is why agricultural price policy has successfully controlled the violent fluctuation in prices of agricultural product. The advantage of agricultural price policy can be also explained by the fact that it provided benefit to the consumers by supplying the agricultural product at a reasonable price, because a major section of people in India are living below the poverty line, and it is necessary and it is the responsibility of the competent authority to provide the necessary agricultural product at a reasonable price, which can be materialized by framing appropriate agricultural price policy. The agricultural price policy also made provision for supplying essential raw materials for agro industry like cotton, textile, sugar, vegetable oil, etc. at a reasonable price. The advantage of agricultural price policy in India can also be explained by the fact that it resulted in notable change in the cropping pattern of Indian agriculture. Now, it is, since we are talking about advantages or success of agricultural price policy, it is necessary to discuss the failures. What are the areas where the agricultural price policy are not able to ensure proper result. The first one is that there is an inadequate coverage of agricultural price policy in India. because the official procurement facility reaches only to few farmers. So that is considered to be another one of the grey area for agricultural price policy in India. The public distribution system in India is not fully effective. A large number of poor farmers are not getting benefits from this program. Continuous rise in prices of food product due to existence of middlemen for last few years is a major failure of the policy. The policy is unable to control the wholesale price inflation in India. The issue relating to increase in transportation costs, over fragmentation of distribution network, etc., are also considered to be one of the important failure of agricultural sector or agricultural price policy. Because the success of the agricultural price policy depends on some inherent factors associated with the system of agricultural production like cropping pattern, land holding, income distribution, etc. However, what happened? So those issues, as I have already told, in the cropping pattern, the land holding, income distribution, etc., the agricultural policy in India has failed to address those issues. The agricultural price policy failed to incorporate those factors, and as a result, what happened? The overall development of agricultural sector is hampered. Now, in conclusion, we can say that the main objective of agricultural price policy in India is to protect the interest of the consumers, particularly the poor people living in India. The procurement price set by the government is basically what happened is sometimes it's found that is higher than the minimum support price, so that it can provide the proper incentive to the producer as well as the reasonable price to the consumers. From our discussion, we came to know that in India it is very necessary that since India is the agricultural sector, agricultural price policy should ensure proper remunerative prices for farmers, so that farmers can increase their profit. They can go for proper, or they can increase the investment on agriculture. Because it is the government who fixes the prices of agricultural product. Rice, government is in a position to decide the agricultural prices like rice, wheat, cotton, sugarcane, pulses, etc. to protect farmers. So in this regard, what it is necessary? It is necessary that government set a reasonable minimum support price to safeguard the farmers and helping them to minimum profit. So regarding historical process, I have already explained. Agricultural Price Commission was constituted by the Government of India in 1965. The Food Corporation of India was constituted in 1965. We have already discussed both failure and advantages. And in conclusion, we can say that the success of agricultural price policy will depend on some certain inherent factors associated with the system of agricultural operations like cropping pattern, land holding, and income distributions. So until and unless we addresses those issues effectively, the agricultural price policy, which is basically framed by the competent authority, may not give the desired results. So thank you for attending this or listening this class on agricultural price policy in India. Thank you.